You would phrase the saying something like this. Something like this. Paco thinks Aqueous humor is what used to be called ether, or presently referred to as the atmosphere. They are mistaken because my legally adopted father has not opened their eyes to the fact that it is simply water divided from other water, another type of water, as described in Scripture. So there's that. Close the page with the idea that I'm glad I do not speak in parables like the Lord did, because some things are confusing enough on their own. Waking up on a Monday morning, parts of LA are burning, but not most of it. Oh, I got to do the present the screen thing. I'm showing a blank screen, I think. Now we got something going here. Disclaimer. So did we see that disclaimer? You should have saw a disclaimer there. Now I really only have the one picture of the swan that because I was, there are birds and other animals that mate for life. I'm going to touch on the muted swan. It's muted. It likes to hiss a lot, but it still makes noise. What can I say? I'm waking up to the fact that, it's summer here, school's out. Last year, I had all kinds of drama. Don't know what to expect this year, except the school has admitted they think it's legal to lie to me. And I guess other veterans and other people about their bills, and they can bill you. And if you pay it, fine, but you don't really owe it. But they can tell you do, because that's not illegal. So we got that going on, and it's our goal. I know that a lot of us have not mated with one person for life. That's why it's the goal for our children. It's the goal for our families. It's our goal for the last generation of children that are going to be born. If they're born right now, their best hope is to be 20 years old. But that's pretty much full grown by the time the fire saves us again from this. Now, let's just see what I have and add to my thoughts on the way. We'll start with that. I got some emails today. It looks like Manitou Springs to me. Because I've been there. And if it's not Manitou Springs, it's something like it, where they have, I think Manitou has 7 of these wells. Some of them are more encased in. Hey, what are you doing with my backpack? I'm just kidding. So it could be Manitou Springs. Luc Montagnier, he's the guy that did that DNA thing, sending it over the phone, 12-page introduction to it. Make it a little bit bigger. Maybe there's some more pictures there. Sending DNA over the phone, it kind of propped up the whole, oh man, a homeopathic type of expression. So there's that looks fuzzy. This was in 2005, released in 2014, I think. hasn't been duplicated. They can't really get their mind on it. What was I looking at? The cost of mining these gemstones. Look at that. I was looking for, there was a series of videos that talked about, the exploitation of the, like, emeralds. Maybe it was emeralds. Is that how you spell it? We get too hung up on how we spell. This is how they feed their family.
In just a few minutes,
they work all day in these
barely
mines.
a meter wide. The heat is unbearable and oxygen is scarce. He moves until the last truck leaves.
La lona para echar las lindas gemas.
¿Así? ¿Usted encontrado hoy alguna esmeralda?
Claro, esa es la ilusión de todos. Hace como 25 años.
¿25 años? ¿Vaqueando?
Sí, señor.
¿Y vive de esto?
Sí, señor.
¿Y cómo le ha ido en general?
Bueno, pues eso no se hace nada. A veces se hace y a veces no se hace.
Now, the big mining companies in their area, here's the scrap. So they're going to get to fish through the leftovers. And this is what they do with their free time on working because they can keep them. And look how small they are.
Place.
Yeah.
Put it in his mouth so he doesn't lose it.
Porque para no botarla, se le echa al bolsillo, pero pequeñas se pierden, en cambio la boca no se pierde.
Why do I do it? So I don't lose it.
Ovidio isn't the only one who has been lucky.
Gracias a Dios. Ahí rebuscándonos.
Now, the reason I was showing that is because I got a comment about, the jewelry. And this is medicine to me. And these are, not emeralds, but these are those small little tiger eyes. Blogger peak, okay. And they do it to prop up the gemstone market to make it think that they're not body parts and they're not reserved in judgment. And the Bible doesn't say anything about you can build up gold, silver, and precious stones in your body because you can't carry anything to heaven with you except that which is hidden in your heart. Symbolically through the physicality of what you earn. You can earn wood, hay, and stubble if that's your thing. So there's that. Did you see that? Now wait till you see the guys that got the money, man. But this has been going on since the reset in the 70s. Now they got guns.
The rarest piece is this heart-shaped emerald.
You didn't find that
C'est un joli joyau.
digging through the remnant.
Sur la poitrine d'une femme, ça irait à merveille.
Done deal. The intermediary will pay in cash, as always, and net of tax. These stones are expected to be worth €3,000 more in a year's time. Laurent takes the opportunity to try to also sell him his heart gemstone.
Ça pourrait peut-être les intéresser.
Bien sûr, comme je disais, il y a de la clientèle pour ce genre de pierre aussi. Combien de carats?
26 carats. 26, 24.
Deal it in cash. It's a mafia world. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. I mean, put that in your memory banks and leave a file cabinet open.
Of the church. Despite the common misconception that the Synod of Nicaea determined a list of scriptural books, the status of the apocryphal texts had never been determined by an ecumenical council. Well, there were some provincial or local councils that provided canonical lists, which were not binding on the whole church. The first council that was under the authority of the Bishop of Rome that made any official decision about this issue was after the Reformation at the Council of Trent. Second, despite the fact that the reformers did not generally affirm the inspiration of these texts in the same sense as the rest of either the Old Testament or the New Testament, early Protestant Bibles, including Luther's, did include the Apocrypha. They were, however, placed in a separate section from these other books, distinguishing them from the Old Testament books that were universally recognized by the church. Nonetheless, despite their unfortunate neglect by much of the church today.
Now, if RJ's watching, he's realizing, this is one of the most distinguished Lutheran scholars of all, and he's still messed up. It's a universal thing. I know that bothered you, RJ, but the Apocryphal has always been considered different because it's different. Now, the Aqueous Humour, I mentioned that. It transparent water-like fluid similar to blood plasma in the eyeball. And the idea of the Bible being an eye shouldn't be a stretch. We want to be the apple of God's eye. He opens our eyes if we see, if not. So there's vitreous humor, aqueous humor in the eyeball. In the eyeball, you've seen that some Christians, wonder why it does that sometimes. It's bigger just to leave it. So here's the aqueous humor. And that has been postulated by Do Re Mi, it'd be somewhat connected with the river of life. He's got a river of life flowing out of him. What else we got? We have the chambers, the heavens are in here. Then there's this second type of heaven in the cornea. And then outside of it, if your pineal gland, pituitary glands are working, you're going to get a message from God. You'll hear his voice. And then you can have a river of life flowing out of you. These are the stationary ligaments that the earth can be shaken but not moved because its foundations are sure. And of course, it seems flat, especially from a distance. So that's what I think all the confusion is there. What is the vitreous humor? It's different. After death, vitreous resists putrefaction longer than other body fluids. I believe Abba wanted some of you to know that, understand it. You ever close your eyes, you look at the light, you see the sun maybe, and you see those things floating in your eyes. They're really there. It's not like, oh, it's a bug. It's something. It happens, as the human body ages. There's, I hate to say it, but like the galaxies and kingdoms that live inside you that have pneuma, life. Some of them mate for life, bury their dead. It's not uncommon. There's a kingdom inside you. You're its temple. I don't know if they worship you or not, but what you eat, they eat. You sleep, they sleep. If you're stressed out, worried about sex all the time, I guess they are too. I don't know what they're thinking. Only barely understand what you're thinking. So I wanted to look at what are those thin muscles in the vitreous fluid of the eyeball. I got this glass-like from the Latin vitreous. I got a busy day. I can't just get hung up on that, can I? So what's going on here? It looks like it just turns white and black at. So it can affect a person's emotion. Something's happening. Remember, it all started when Michael Jackson started to get vitiglio. You know it. He's bad. You know it. It's one thing to be millstone. It's another thing to go out and millstone others. Like, I'm into it, man. So look at all these footnotes. It's all pretty new. When did Michael Jackson get it? The Torah for Dummies. Oh, I did have one picture I wanted you to see in case I couldn't find it in the Wikipedia website here. Postmortem forensic virtuous resist putrefaction longer than other body fluids within hours, days, weeks, postmortem interval, metabolic, postbolic, according to the Jewish religion, out of nowhere. According to the Jewish religion, extracting the vitreous fluid for forensic chemical analysis is preferred to blood analysis in case a forensic or post-mortem toxology test is deemed necessary. This avoids the loss of even a few droplets of blood from the body prior to burial. Says who? Citation needed, but Wikipedia AI computers deemed it necessary. We got to talk about it. That's what that's Wikipedia here. And here's I was reminded of that because I saw Torah for Dummies. Yeah, the Torah is for dummies. I didn't think I was allowed to be that rude, but here he just says it. Torah is for dummies. Well, the Talmud is for dummies, the oral law. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. What this is all coming down to from the very beginning is, wow, I just had some sort of big message sent to me. I skipped over it before I read it. What it's coming down to is that the whole flat earth psyop that was released, because we wouldn't know it was flat unless they let us know it, what was to divide the people into camps of the people who really hear his voice and now are such a minority, going to everybody else, wait a minute, the God of the New Testament is the God of the Old Testament. This whole idea that there was another God of the Old Testament that was wiping out Nephilim blood or whatever, for whatever reason, they always want to make it seem like, see, now we figured out why that mean old God of the Old Testament was so bad. Oh, doesn't it seem like that? Because it's true. So, nothing wrong with the first 5 books of the Bible. Untitled document of the Torah studies. God has many names, but no name can possibly be adequate. I don't think they're going to get into the Trinity thing, but that's okay. The Christians don't really believe they're saved anyway. They want them to gather in a certain area so that they can get wiped out. Go get wiped out. Tells the story of slavery in Egypt and ultimate liberation and their continuous breaking of the covenant, which God maintained to fulfill his promise to Abraham that through his descendant, all nations would be blessed. And they forgot about the light to the Gentiles. No, the Jews have nothing to offer. Matter of fact, no one can actually prove they're Hebrew today. Can't give me no blood test. Go, yeah, this proves that this is better than a piece of paper that is required that traces my lineage all the way back to Aaron or one of the tribes. They don't have that. And according to scripture, then you can't claim to be a Jew. But who would want to be anyway? You know, the idea is to hear his voice. Lucianism, variety of conditions, partial loss of pigmentation in an animal. If they consider you an animal. Piebaldum, Wardenberg syndrome, Isabelism, xanthrochromism, xantheism, depigmentation. Who ever heard of that? Just you get injured and all of a sudden my pigment's going away due to the lack of melanin production in both the eyeball and iris. Those affected with leprosy sometimes have pink pupils, but very rarely, due to the underlying blood vessels. Like I said, I'm just reviewing a lot of things we've talked about. And I've got a lot of things to go over. Look at it. Oh, a mute swan. It's the whole idea. Where would they come up if it was like, actually, I want to do it like they do on the Discovery Channel? Why would so many species come up with, well, I do want to do it like that, but only with this one for the rest of my life. And I'm hoping to raise a family and be happy because, you know, they have recordings of these things. They know when they're happy. They know when they're sad, like every other animal. Hey, look, they're not on her back anymore. Oh, albino. That's a pretty good painting. Look how mad. You're threatening my egg? Get behind me. A lot of swamps, a lot of swans. And I was thinking of the black swan there. Oh, look at that. We're in love. Let's make some babies. You can't prop up Galileo and still be try to be like you're in the church and all this.
He tried to explain within a Marxist framework
dumb
why
Christians.
modern science of the type you described didn't arise in China. And the conclusion he came to was it was a difference in a fundamental presupposition. The idea that there was a unification in the sense that there was one creator who had created the universe and created the human mind to study it. And the Chinese didn't have that. That was his view. So it seems to me that is an interesting response to this. If you take the whole world, modern science arose in a particular place, in a particular time, where, in a sense, the general background was Christian. But on the other hand, it didn't arise where the general background was very different.
The sinologist Lennox is likely referring to is Joseph Needham. His work was so prominent that it became known as the Needham question. Essentially, why did modern science, as we know it, characterized by the systematic use of experiment, mathematical theory, and hypothesis testing, develop in Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries and not in China, despite China's earlier and often superior technological and scientific achievements? Needham concluded that in the East, there was no confidence that the code of nature's laws could be unveiled and read, because there was no assurance that a divine being more rational than ourselves, had ever formulated such a code capable of being read. In other words, because the Chinese believed in a pantheon of spirits and gods, they had no expectation for nature to behave universally the same.
Oh, that's rough. But I just wanted you to hear that to say that I think when you believe in a pantheon of gods, you're believing in the Trinity. And these white Europeans, they did it all wrong because their overall goal was to take it back to humanism, to Athens, to Greek, Plato, Aristotle, Alexander the Great, Socrates, Epicurus. Is this a thing or not? That red shoes thing that the Pope and those guys wear. I guess this guy did it too. His name was Red Shoes. This one was another red shoe that no more red shoes. Okay, it looks like the red shoes things, they want to sex it up. That doesn't look that sexy. So anyway, I'd heard about that, and I was just, you know, I think that's still a thing. 1894, 1811. Okay, canals, railways, tunnels, blood vein, artery, nerve.
Still in use today. It's a double bore railway tunnel. Then you've got the canal tunnel, the first tunnel. At a lower level than the railway tunnels, you will notice it's got a date of 1811 on it. Now, that's when it opened. They actually started construction in 1794. So it took 17 years to get this thing built and opened. Quite often we talk about Victorian.
All right, we are going to look at some more of this video because it's the kind of thing I like. It's the kind of thing you like, that you'll see no way did they build it, but I don't think I've seen a better example in a while of how it transitions from the, you know, the six-sided carved sandstone to the brick and some other different, well, you'll see, and tie it into the mud flood and everything. It's just all good. It's all good. It's all going to get tied together later with, oh yeah, with the Great Raft, and how around the Clinton's Ditch, which became the Erie Canal, he was thrown in jail in the late 1700s saying, I want to build a canal. What he really wanted to do was dig it out. And so they found him in England about the same time, say they built them. They started the Lewis and Clark. When we get into the video of the Great Raft, you're going to be all tied in and it'll all make sense.
In engineering, well, Standage Canal Tunnel is Georgian engineering. The two tunnels on the right there that you see are the now defunct railway tunnels. They're now disused, but they're used as safety tunnels, and I'll demonstrate that.
So here's a little bit more on it. These guys got to go in it. They're excited. They love it. I love this whole thing. Anything about Manchester, England, and the tunnels, they want to go in it.
Was very kindly invited me along to go through Standage Tunnel, but on the day before that I booked, so I thought, you know what, let's do it twice. So what we've got is we've got one trip going through, the main trip going through from Marsden through to Diggle. I'll show you this on a map.
How far?
Then, the next day we did Diggle Marsden, and we're going to use a little bit of footage for both, but I'll let you know what's going on with that. So let's crack on and get in the rather unstable kayaks.
You might be the unstable one there, partner. It's like looking in a mirror.
And we'll go through.
Try to not fall. Safety check.
Safety check. Safety check. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, are you all ready? There's a little look of fear in your face. Yeah, too right.
So here's the, you know.
Perfect. All right then, guys. So
it's a star fort.
Just going to get you all in the tunnel.
Well before the time of Christ, I'm sure. Now, We'll be looking to see transition
So
points.
here we go. You'd be thinking
This is a long
at this
video, so
point
I'm
there
going to
was a
have to
tow
hop
path through
around.
the canal tunnel, but there isn't. It was built without a tow path. 3.2 miles long.
So it's a toll canal, but it was built without a toll path. Okay. Sorry, you're not making sense.
Put that in yards and meters. And one of the things I want to show you is the change in all the different sort of architecture. You've got blue engineering brick, red brick, you've got stone, you've got jack arches, and you've got bare rock, and you've got the dreaded spraycrete as well. So I'll be showing you all that. Now, the whole journey took, I think we were 2.5 hours underground, maybe just under 2.5 hours. And so I've had to make
So different types of
what I will
brick.
do is I'll be showing you the main parts of the
Those even bricks, those are the
tunnel.
like
So
door
as always, I'm
lintels.
just going to show you briefly where Standedge Tunnel is, pronounced Stanage. I'm going to show you where it is in relationship to Manchester. There you go. The village of Marsden is about 15 miles northeast of Manchester city centre. So the boats are quite unstable. You feel they're going to tip all the time. It's very no sudden moves in these boats, I'm telling you. So we're approaching the first shaft now, I'm being told. So I shall film this for you. Now, normally when you go under a shaft,
So you can listen to this yourself and see.
after you get wet through, because the amount of water that comes down is unbelievable, even when it's dry up above. But I think this shaft here is offset to the canal tunnel.
Right and the left.
The boards that you see are a walkway between the railway tunnels. There's 3 railway tunnels here. I will show you a sketch in a bit that will illustrate the layout of all the tunnels. The canal tunnel is at a lower level than the railway tunnels. The strengthener here as well. You know, it's a brick strengthener, blue engineering brick there. See, blue strengthener. And we're going to kind of like a whole area that's been probably strengthened after the initial tunnel was dug. A lot of these jack arches were actually put in after the canal tunnel was built.
See how the look up at the top? Did you see? The next one has a more example of where it's stone. These tunnels are veins, arteries of the Titans, the mountains. That's all true from the voided previous creation. And the people were quite engineering the Ha-Adam, We-Adams of made from the dust in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. But
when they were building the nearby railway tunnels,
see
the
them?
blasting
They're
in
starting
those
to
railway
show them
tunnels
more and
caused a lot
more.
of damage to the canal tunnel. So remedial work had to be done. It had to be
This is the original Titan vein that they bricked over.
supported
Here's
because
one on the roof.
it caused a lot of damage building the railway tunnels. I see the rock poking through.
I don't know if they didn't feel they needed these bricks or they didn't have time to change them, but these jack stands, they left some of them with gaps where you can see the original Titan shell.
As we go through, that's an indication of exactly what we're going through.
But they use it for their irrigation and sewage. Why wouldn't we?
It's very nerve-wracking because...
Dude, this guy is so nervous, isn't he? But he's doing it. I like that.
Marsden Moor.
If you fall out and get wet, you could stand up, man.
You get an impression of just how bleak and bad the conditions were, but we'll come back to that. That thing there.
Ooh, I want to see some of the bleak conditions.
Than they could on a pack horse, and that included your textiles, so woolen and all that kind of thing, stone for building works, and also what was commonly known as night soil, which was used in the tanners. So they were transporting a load of poo through the tunnel when it was completed.
Now, if you found that interesting and you
See, they didn't brick this part up. Must have been a smaller, not a blood vessel or something.
You would like to kayak through Standish Tunnel, or you want to do a boat trip, you can look on the Canal and River Trust website.
Go.
Oh my God. Like that. Oh. Red rope number 2, I think. That's scary.
Body part. Hey,
In the middle.
those are body parts. This, I'm just going to show you a few because, wow.
Early 1960s, the race to space between the US and the Soviet Union was at its peak. Both countries wanted to be the first to explore outer space, and to have the upper hand, the CIA came up with a kidnapping scheme. The target, a Soviet satellite. The CIA led a highway robbery. Several American soldiers carried out an operation in the South Vietnamese hamlet of My Lai, leading to the deaths of at least 300 Vietnamese citizens.
Oh, I guess they killed him in the cold blood.
Over the years, American agencies have led several other missions that ended up being completely useless, and Iran Flight 655 is one of the most gruesome mistakes the U.S. Navy made. In 1988, a U.S. warship shot down an Iranian civil aircraft in the Persian Gulf. The plane was en route to Dubai and had 290 people on board. The U.S. Navy incorrectly identified the plane as an Iranian fighter jet and launched a missile to take it down. The declassified documents exposed this grave mistake that led to the deaths of 290 innocent people. 8 years later, in 1996, the U.S. and Iranian governments settled for $61.8 million that would be used to compensate the families who lost their loved ones. However, the U.S. never apologized for this mistake. To make matters, the CIA aimed at retrieving the remains of the Soviet Gulf-class ballistic missile submarine K-129. The submarine sunk in the North Pacific while on patrol, and according to reports, it rested 3 miles below the water on the seafloor.
It just goes on, you know?
Increased significantly. The Cold War led to the CIA to draw up several bizarre schemes to take down Castro, most of which were aimed at eliminating him. However, one of the most absurd covert operations was Operation Northwoods, an elaborate secret mission aimed at committing acts of violence deliberately against U.S. and Cuban civilians and blaming them on the Cuban government to justify a war against Cuba. When these documents were declassified in 1998, they revealed that the Joint Chiefs of...
I wonder what's going on in L.A.
3 classified videos of the U.S. Navy showing unidentified aircraft roaming around in impossible ways.
Right.
Cat is one of the craziest CIA operations of all time. A memo titled Views of Trained Cats detailed the CIA's intention of using cats as spies and releasing them into the Soviet embassy to wander around and secretly hear sensitive information.
The idea of this is, I think I have one more from this guy.
After World War II,
just hold on to your hat.
Set up
We'll
secret
whip right through
paramilitary
them.
groups in Western Europe called stay-behind organizations. A stay-behind operation is one where a country places secret operatives or organizations in its own territory for use in case of a later enemy occupation. Operation Gladio was the code name for these covert operations. The official purpose was to prepare for a possible Soviet invasion by using sabotage and guerrilla warfare behind enemy lines. However, in reality, these groups also carried out assassinations, psychological warfare, and false flag operations to undermine left-wing parties in Western Europe. They even supported anti-communist militias and right-wing terrorism, with reports suggesting they were involved in the torture and killing of communists.
Jack Bauer doesn't care. He'll shoot him in the knee.
To Iran. This was especially controversial because after the Iran hostage crisis in November 1979, when Iranian students seized 53 American hostages from...
This is what motivated me to join the military. I was a sucker.
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran, including diplomats and civilians, the U.S. government under President Jimmy Carter had imposed an arms embargo on Iran, making it illegal to sell weapons to the country. The Reagan administration argued that the arms shipments were part of a plan to free 7 U.S. hostages held in Lebanon by Hezbollah, an Islamist paramilitary group with close ties to Iran and connections to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The proposal to exchange arms for hostages was put forward by Manoucher Ghorbanifar, an Iranian arms dealer in exile, and some officials believed that these sales would pressure Iran to compel Hezbollah to release the hostages.
That sounds like a really good idea. I wonder why it didn't work.
a senior official in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Lebanese magazine Ash Shira exposed the arrangement on November 3, 1986. The Iranian government confirmed the Ash Shira story, and within 10 days, it became international news. In response, President Reagan appeared on national television and acknowledged that the weapons transfers had indeed occurred. But he insisted—
He didn't admit he was gay, though, and he was. He let his son, Michael Reagan, his adopted son, he acted like, I believe that Michael was broken on purpose, just for their fun.
that the U.S. had not traded arms for hostages. This was the first public report of the weapons for hostages deal. According to journalist Seymour Hersh,
but later I think he had to come back and go, you know what, we did it. We did do it.
Ash initially claimed during a press conference that two of his co-workers, Max Gomez and Ramon Medina, worked for the CIA. The investigation was slowed down when large amounts of documents related to the affair were either destroyed or kept from investigators by officials in the Reagan administration. In March 1987, President Reagan made another nationally televised address, taking full responsibility for the affair and saying, what began as a strategic opening to Iran deteriorated in its implementation into trading arms for hostages.
And he lied the whole time. He had, like Biden, is going to be, depending on who you are, the greatest or the worst ever. He was Alzheimer's. He, they claim he had Alzheimer's, and he did. But it doesn't end with this. This was an important one, but they kept going.
Augusto Pinochet's spy chief, Manuel Contreras, invited 50 intelligence officers from these countries to the Army War Academy in Santiago, Chile. These countries became the founding members of the operation, but Ecuador and Peru later joined, taking a more peripheral role. Operation Condor continued until it ended with the fall of the Argentine junta in 1983. Condor operatives used brutal tactics such as death flights, a method of extrajudicial killing where victims were dropped from airplanes or helicopters into oceans, large rivers, or mountains. Due to its secretive nature, the exact number of deaths directly linked to Operation Condor remains highly. CIA documents from 1976, American historian J. Patrice McSherry claims that in the 1960s and early 1970s, international security officials at the U.S. Army School of the Americas and the Conference of American Armies developed plans to counter what they saw as threats from political dissidents in South America. In June 1999, under President Bill Clinton's order, the State Department released thousands of declassified documents that revealed for the first time that the CIA, as well as the State and Defense Departments, were fully aware of Operation Cyclone leaned heavily towards supporting militant Islamic groups, including those with jihadist ties. Operation Cyclone was one of the longest and most expensive secret prominent American journalists into a propaganda network and even influenced various front groups. Operation Mockingbird wasn't limited to influencing domestic public opinion, it also aimed to shape views internationally. The Church Committee's report, issued in 1976 by a Senate Select Committee led by Senator Frank Church, confirmed earlier claims that the CIA had secret ties with private institutions, including the press. Although the report didn't name names, right-leaning and left-leaning sources frame these stories. This right-leaning source's headline says, "Pain now, prosperity later," while this left-leaning one says that Trump is scrambling to defend the chaos. You can finally start trusting the news again by going over to of secret and illegal projects run by the FBI from 1956 to 1971. The goal was to use cloud seeding to induce extra rainfall during the rainy season. From messages onto other government agencies. The intercepted communications were shared with the FBI, CIA, Secret Service, Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, and the Department of Defense. Starting in 1962, the NSA kept a watch list of Americans traveling to Cuba. Over time, the list expanded to include narcotics traffickers. From 1960,
you know what? We're not the good people. Look, 1.2 million subscribers. The world knows this. They haven't put it together quite like you. But when they talk about that one, where's that? I wonder if he had a playlist. Because I know he had more about the United States. Give me un momento. quite a variety.
Retrieving the remains of the Soviet Golf-class ballistic component and put it back on the truck. This happened after the
That's a
Soviets
kind of
launched a
one.
multinational exhibit of their
Maybe they
lessons and Bacillus globigii into San Francisco Bay. The operation CIA, FBI, and NSA. However, there was an accusation or conspiracy theory that was much more worrying than the rest of them. It was thought that the CIA had developed a pistol that could fire a poison dart from around 300 feet, cause death, and leave no trace of what the cause was. When William Colby declared that they had a poison dart gun that was potentially basically completely silent, felt like a mosquito bite to the target, went through clothes, caused a heart attack, and left no traces but a small red spot because the dart melted, the public was shocked. Furthermore, it was revealed that this wasn't an isolated case. It was part of improved relations with the Soviet Union. Furthermore, the Cuban Missile Crisis happened when the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles capable of hitting the U.S. on Cuban soil
Everything
after
is
the U.S.
fake.
placed theirs on Italy and Turkey. Insectothopter, which was a drone the size of a dragonfly and hand-painted to look like one. It was kept secret until December 2003, when it was revealed to the public at the CIA Museum, and the project was abandoned because it was too difficult to fly in crosswinds. Another similar project was the AeroVironment Nano Hummingbird, created with specifications given by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. These weren't the only times they used animals or crafted fake animals to spy on their enemies. During the Cold War, they developed a camera so light that it could be carried by pigeons in order to take. Then, on the 4th of August, said that a second attack happened, while this was false. The commander of the Maddox, Captain John Herrick, initially reported the attack, but later expressed doubts, attributing the radar signals to freak weather.
Now, he wasn't the admiral of the Maddox. Now, this was the confrontation that they lied about that caused the whole, extension of the escalation of Vietnam War, so that the protest, the LSD, we're Mayberry RFD, moms and cherry pies and apple pies and softball. And then there's the rest of the world that wants to take that away from us. And then we were hippies, and now we're whatever, DEI. But the head of this ties into Jim Morrison, the singer of the Doors' death. The United States shouldn't have done it. They thought they were bigger than the other mafias had told them to keep your limits. They were trying to expand, it seemed. Not Ted Bundy. So what I was looking for was Admiral Morrison. I don't think it's this Morrison. Yeah. He is the Rear Admiral, naval aviator, father of Jim Morrison, lead singer of the Doors. The guy, they show him posing on the deck with his son. Here's Jim Morrison, was ready in 1964 to go to West Point or to the Naval Academy, Annapolis. And this guy helped fake a war, so the Chinese or the whoever took this young man, programmed him to sing, "Father, I want to kill you. Mother, I want to rape you." And when he retired from the military, Captain Morrison, Admiral Morrison, the day he retired, his son was found dead in a pool, age 27, one of that group. But he did he was able to channel, well, let's say that he broke on through to the other side. He had to break on through LA woman. He had that voodoo thing going there. He heard the mojo rising. Not a lot of pictures of the Morrisons. These are his medals for starting the war. Huh. He did it. They paid him back. It's what they do. It's how the mafia does things. You're in it. You don't want to be a part of it. I'm here to warn you that you're going to have to find your own camp of the saints somewhere. Hunker down, hunker down, and then start teaching those kids about the mute swans and saying, we don't sleep around anymore. Maybe it does take a village to keep an eye on some of those people. Acoustic Kitty.
And Bacillus globigii into San Francisco Bay. The operation happened between September 20th and 27th. Difficult to fly.
Big animals.
Herrick initially reported the attack, but later expressed doubts, attributing if there were any physiological changes that could point to a sexual arousal, such as the dilation of their pupils. Of course, this machine was completely pseudoscientific and unreliable. The room's light could change the dilation of the pupil, and many more outside variables made it faulty. Nonetheless, these tests caused hundreds, if not thousands, of people to get fired. The U.S. government poisoned alcohol. From 1920 to 1933, the United States banned alcohol, entering the Prohibition era. This made the alcohol black market flourish, enabling criminal organizations like the mafia to enrich themselves. So the United States alcohol, a substance that made the illegal drinks really dangerous, as a very small amount of undiluted methyl alcohol could kill a human. The effects quickly showed. In 1926, in New York City, 585 people died from this government action, and over 5,000 fatalities from this poisoning, at least a 600% increase in DNA of bin Laden's sister, who had died in Boston in 2010. The program ultimately failed. It led to the arrest of a participating doctor, Shaquille Afridi, and was widely criticized for undermining public health. The operation is blamed for increasing vaccine hesitancy in Pakistan and triggering violence against healthcare workers, who were perceived as spies. As a result, Pakistan saw a resurgence of
I'm not
polio.
laughing at they got stoned for being spies. I just think that was such a crude drawing. It had to be a joke.
Becoming the country with the highest number of polio cases in the world by 2014. The CIA director issued a directive in 2013 prohibiting the agency from using vaccination programs for a potential blind spot in critical analysis for people who typically consume right and left-leaning sources. The differences in coverage between political leanings are clear. For example, a right-leaning source calls Trump's tariff proposition a threat, while a left-leaning source describes the situation in a more intense way. Ground news doesn't tell you what to think. They gather to sue the government, but they lost because the bacteria used in the test was unproven to be responsible for his death. The urinary tract outbreak was so unusual that the Stanford doctors wrote it up for a medical journal. None of the other hospitals in the city reported similar spikes in cases, and all 11 victims had urinary tract infections following medical procedures, suggesting that the source of their infections was inside the hospital. Cases of pneumonia in San Francisco also increased after Serratia marcescens was released, even though in 1956. They wanted to see the body's reaction to radioactive isotope strontium-90, which represented the most serious threat to humans. Doing it on alive humans would be an ethical monstrosity, and there weren't many familiars that would like to donate their deceased loved ones to be experimented on like this. Somehow, though, 1,500 sample cadavers, mostly babies and young children, appeared out of nowhere. That's because they were taken from countries ranging from Australia to Europe, often without their parents' consent or knowledge. A British isolated Tibetan resistance groups, which eventually led to the creation of a paramilitary force of 2,000 men. They also sent military supplies in exile. His brother, Gyalo Thondup, was also considered a CIA's top asset. The program ended after President Nixon, President of the United States. She played a significant role in managing the country after her husband's condition, and some scholars even call her the secret president or the first woman president. She took control of many of the day-to-day functions of the executive branch, deciding which communications, issues, and matters of state were important enough to bring to the bedridden president's attention. For this reason, she required that all members of the cabinet send urgent matters, memoranda, correspondence, questions, and requests to her. In this way, she became the sole link of communication between the president and his cabinet. Even
That's not too weird, is it? I hope you know they're talking about President Woodrow Wilson, the man who loved the Ku Klux Klan. Even premiered the Ku Klux Klan's famous movie in the White House because he's quoted in it by saying, I think it was, "I love the Ku Klux Klan."
Even though she claimed that she didn't take any decisions herself, her role as a potential gatekeeper of info gave her lots of power and influence, and some suggest that she even successfully pushed for the removal of Secretary of State Robert Lansing, CIA's cat spies. In the 1960s, Operation Acoustic Kitty was launched, which aimed to generate mutual attraction, leading to mass confusion and panic, along with the gay.
I got 3 words for you. Facebook. Most of you are probably familiar with Facebook, formerly the world's I don't even know how to unpack that. Believe me, if I had the secret vibration trick that billionaires use to get rich, I wouldn't be making fucking YouTube videos. I'd be out there vibrating. I'd be handing out wads of cash to children. I'd be teaching the children how to vibrate. Pause. YouTuber moment.
It allowed me to attract a life of abundance quickly, thanks to this video.
So he doesn't have a Facebook page, and he was told, "Oh, yes, you do have a Facebook page. You're on it every day."
This is an account that literally just reposts everything I have ever made pretty much multiple times a day. At the time of me recording this, it's reposting a video that I made back when I was in college. Oh my God. You know, guys, if you ever look back on yourself and think, cringe, I think that's actually a good thing because it means you've changed a little bit. Wow, my hair was great. I'll be the.
No, it's like a girl's hair, but you know, if you're not a Bible believer, you know, and you're not into like that, and even some Bible believers have to, you know, baby step into it. They love their long hair. I mean, I mean, I didn't want to have a receding hairline all my life, but that's the cards I was dealt.
First to admit it. But the primary thing that really irked me about this account is not only is it impersonating me, but it's this account's Facebook story that really just ties it together.
My friends laughed at me when I said I'd get rich quickly using an ancient vibration technique. But a few months later, they were shocked when they saw everything I had achieved.
He has a pretty nice house, though. I mean, he's not doing too bad. But this is not him.
Been just ripping all of my content and decided to only follow himself. Again, I have no way of proving this, but if so, that's actually hilarious. What a way to get back at me for fact-checking one of your videos. Now, hilarious profile picture is a picture of Nemrut. I've been there. There's me in front of that their head. And there we go. There we. Incredible unveiling. Enormous mermaid skeleton discovered, embracing her offspring in a poignant embrace. That is poignant, I gotta say. What's the bottom one? What the hell is that about? I don't know why I'm trying to make sense of this. Unbelievable. Ancient extraterrestrial images. Aliens surface in historical records. You're right, that is quite literally, by definition, unbelievable. I remember when AI images first started to become a thing and I started to see like conspiracy theorists use them. And I remember thinking to myself, uh-oh. And now it's like really come full circle. I don't even think we've fully seen the effect that it's going to have on destroying the minds of the good people of this planet. But just the sheer quantity of AI images that you can make and how convincing it's getting is going to absolutely destroy our brains. This job is one that I don't feel worried that AI is going to replace, but I do still feel like AI could eventually put me out of business. Not because it's going to replace me, but because AI images are going to just become so common that every single conspiracy theory is just going to be hinged on them. And all I'm going to have to do is become like an image forensics to prove that the evidence...
You know how to get your channel to grow? Use AI images. People love them.
I mean, we're facing a problem with this image that you'll be able to identify almost immediately. And that is the fact that you can clearly see in the fossil here, it has horns. And in the reconstruction, there are no horns. It also appears in this glass case, which is definitely the same excavation. It has no horns. Winning a crusade here. I don't know why. Get that dude. I don't know what that's all about. What's this?
His basic point in this video was computers have taken over. Now, this is from last week. That's a lot of views. You need to know this, that the Great Raft thing, you know?
Buy stickers now, and I'll explain more about this in the next video. You're in for a treat. If you liked Philip Ziba, ooh, you're gonna love this next one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the Freeman Custis Expedition. While it's been largely forgotten in sort of the general cultural memory, the Freeman Custis Expedition was one of the most important and expensive expeditions of the time. It was commissioned by Thomas Jefferson himself, who viewed it
At the same time as the Lewis and Clark thing, because it was time the Phrygian Cap Masons and the Hellfire Club Rosicrucians were in charge. They did it. They got there. And now they were going to rewrite their history so they could say, this is how we discovered it. They found it, cleaned it out, and here we are today.
As being almost as important as the much more famous presidential expedition of Lewis and Clark. The expedition was headed by Thomas Freeman. He was a civil engineer and acted as the expedition's cartographer. As the name would suggest, he was of course joined by Peter Custis, who was a student of medicine and joined as the expedition's naturalist. These two men were joined by 22 others, including a expedition became pretty accustomed to having to navigate around these obstructions, either lifting the boats up over blockages or navigating through smaller tributary bayous in order to get around them. While most blockages could be navigated with relative ease, in mid-June, the party, which had now been reinforced with 20 additional
You're
men...
going to be so happy about the slow build of this video for the big finish. I hope I'm not building it up too much, but I'm going to tie this together.
And hit a snag of monumental proportions. At first, it just appeared like a logjam, not dissimilar to the things that they had navigated around in order to get this far. But as they disembarked their boats to investigate further, they found that it was something much bigger. This tangle of old-growth cedar and cypress trunks was so big that it formed a completely impenetrable mass. Clearing it, like they had with some of the smaller log jams, was completely out of the question. According to expedition logs, when the team climbed on top of this...
Remember, they went out and they were shown this by the people who had been, you know, spared from the reaping at the end of the 1,000 years in 1711. And it had been sitting there, you know, since Lord knows how long, either 1,300, 1,000 years or 100 years. Because there was a catastrophic destruction in Noah's flood, Armageddon, and the reaping.
They found it to be, quote, so tightly bound that a man could walk over it in any direction. Since there was no way through this enormous tangle of debris, and the team had no idea how far it stretched, they had no choice but to circumnavigate it by going into the smaller bayous around the river. In most places, this enormous blockage spanned the entirety of the Red River, and the only way that you could see where the actual river bottom was by identifying where the trees were growing out of the blockage from the riverbank below. All told, the expedition, which consisted of now more than 40 men, spent 3 grueling weeks trudging through the hot, humid bayous of western Louisiana to circumnavigate. John F. Ground bravely thought to himself, what if a wall was down here? It was estimated that the raft could be upwards of 25 feet deep in places, filling the entire riverbed all the way to the very...
Because that's a pretty big flood that swept all those trees and blocked the rivers. Allegedly swept some mountains and islands. 1/3 of them just away. You're gone. Now you're no more.
Bottom. Now, when you look at this thing, you may be thinking to yourself, how the fuck? And that's exactly what I was wondering. And there's actually 2 running theories for how the fuck. The first theory for the formation of this feature is probably the one that all of us would immediately go to, which is just this sort of runaway snowball effect of things falling into the river and then building on each other. You see, the Red River goes through a lot of red clay, which is where the Red River gets its name. This part of the world is very sedimentary. It just pushed it backwards and lodged all of this debris that had come down the Mississippi and just pushed it upstream and made an impenetrable mass. And then from there, for the next 1,200 years, stuff just kept...
Or there was an Armageddon. But what's the big deal about it?
And the reintroduction of beavers into places that they were hunted to extinction often comes with massive positive benefits for the local ecology and all of the human industries that rely on it, from tourism to hunting and fishing. Now, I want you to apply this principle to the Great Raft. It was essentially a 160-mile-long beaver dam that lasted for over 1,000 years. That's pretty big. It's impossible to understate not only how crucial this structure was for the local ecology, but also how much it altered the environment. You see, the huge amount of water that still needed to travel out to the sea was forced to take new paths. On its periphery began to dry up. Among these, Black Lake, Lat Lake, and Saline Lake disappeared almost entirely, and with them the enormous diversity of fish, migratory birds, and wild game that had sustained not only the—
They cleaned out. It took years, but they used dynamite and everything. And like the Erie Canal, they finally cleared out the Red River. It affected the Apalachia and the Mississippi to this day. And the debate will be, well, I'll give you that in a minute.
Indigenous people, but early American pioneers. As these once productive lakes vanished, they left behind cracked, dry mudflats. Along with the lakes, many of the bayous also began to run dry. Among these was Big Cypress Bayou, which ironically was so wide and deep that it was easily navigable by paddle steamers before the removal of the Great Raft, which is the only reason I even know about this structure at all. And as I went down the Wikipedia rabbit hole learning about the madness of this story, I learned that Cato Lake even had one more insult to injury. As if all of this wasn't enough, Cato Lake was one of the first areas to ever test an overwater oil rig. In fact, just off the shores of Cato Lake today is the aptly named Oil City. In my opinion, a poetic example of our culture's insatiable need to squeeze an area until there is nothing left. While to the Americans, the removal of the Great Raft was a triumph, to the Cato people, it was essentially a death sentence. As we spoke about earlier, the Cato people had developed their culture for over 1,000 years to work alongside this massive monument. It had also kept them safe.
They lived under, Christ. That was the 1,000-year reign. They made it work. And afterwards, we have, Satan had this in mind, a whole group of nations doing something else.
European invasion up until this point. And now, both of those things were gone. Due to their unique geographic position, they had seen what had happened to all of their neighbors around them. The vicious conquest of the Spaniards in the west, as well as that of the French, English, and now American in the north and east. While their unique environment had kept them safe for many years, they knew that it wasn't long before this invasion came right to their doorstep. In 1835, with much of the Great Raft destroyed, the way of life of the Cato people began to collapse. Every system of survival they had developed for over the last 1,000 years was destroyed with snag boats and nitroglycerin. And the United States, just like every other colonizing force in history and today, knew this. They knew that one of the best ways to control a people is to cut off their supply of food. While yes, their primary goal of the destruction of the Great Raft was to—
How do you feel about your supply of food?
Would just take what they want by force. In an attempt to save their people, they were left no choice but to sign a treaty of cession, yielding almost 1 million acres that their ancestors had inhabited for over 1,000 years to the hands of the US government. During the negotiations—
And who was doing this to them? Immigrants. Our country was built on the manifest destiny thing. We were the immigrants. We knew better. And now we have, a few generations of people going, and we had a lot of immigration in the 1900s saying, no, this is the way it should be. We don't want any more immigrants. And they took it from the people.
The Cato people lacked their primary translator and were forbidden from having their French Creole translators present. It's impossible to say how much this handicap affected the results of this treaty. When ink was put to paper, the Cato people were given— You'll find a few small, shrunken lakes, almost always with a large man-made earthen dam facing towards the river. These lakes have vacation cabins, campgrounds, and fishing and boating opportunities. But the Great Raft, which created these lakes and much of the land around it, has been almost forgotten. There is nobody alive for several generations who has an actual memory of this structure's existence. And while for those who live along the banks of the Red River today, there may be a lasting cultural memory, in the overarching American consciousness, they'll scream woke or white guilt to prevent them from having to have an uncomfortable conversation. But history is uncomfortable. It's impossible to tell the story of the Great Raft and leave out the greater implications. It would not be enough.
Here's some interest.
So the water just goes so fast. They're like, why is there a drought here? It's like, well, why do you fucking think there's a drought here? Also, you put like 800 million people in the fucking desert, okay? I don't know what you want me to tell you. Because of this, beavers create immensely productive ecosystems that can last long after the beavers have abandoned the structure. This is why these animals are known ecologically as a keystone species. This one species essentially builds an ecosystem, and the reintroduction of beavers into places that they were hunted.
All right, so let's see the Aphechelia. Can I? Aphechelia, back in the day, it used to feed into the Mississippi, and the Mississippi would feed into it. But when the Great Raft opened up the rivers, they realized they were going to lose New Orleans and their beloved Mardi Gras demon worshiping center. So they built the whole Aphechelia River to keep the river flowing as long as they could to New Orleans. The argument is going to be, did Alan Paco figure it out? Or did Lord tell him? Or a combination of both? Wow, we're lagging here.
All right, hiking back towards the trailhead, the area where we began this adventure. And there is a storm approaching. I can already feel the rain and the wind picking up, thunder getting closer. So trying to just make some time before the weather gets real severe out here.
Whoa.
Hi everyone, my name is Ken. Welcome to this house. Today we are at the Chain of Rocks Bridge just north of St. Louis, Missouri, exploring these water intake towers and old Route 66. Towering from the wake of the Mississippi River are a pair of mysterious towers. But why are they here and what is their purpose? Let's find out. In the late 1800s, as the city of St. Louis experienced rapid population growth, a solution.
So that's a lie. I'm going to have to put in flood control.
Hey guys, Mr. Klein here, and I'm at the Old River Control Structure, smack dab in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, at the confluence of the Mississippi Red and Atchafalaya Rivers. Now, right now, it's Memorial Day weekend, 2019, and
Pre-COVID.
Old River is a small area of land where the Atchafalaya, Mississippi, and Red River of the South all meet. Now, contrary to popular belief, the Red River of the South actually does not...
The Red River is the one that freed up the water after the 1,000-year rain. And so now the French sold it because they knew what was coming. And now America got stuck holding the bag again.
Flow into the Mississippi River. It actually flows directly into the Atchafalaya River. The term Old River refers to this channel in the south that was once a bend of the Mississippi River. As you'll see in the video, the Army Corps of Engineers cut this off and built control structures to the north side of the region to control the amount of water that was going from the Mississippi to the Atchafalaya. So now that you know where we're going, here's a quick science lesson about the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River, well, all of those curves were once the Mississippi River channel over time. So what'll happen is, even if there isn't a huge avulsion, what'll happen is one of these meanders or these deep curves ends up getting cut off from the rest of the river. That's a miniature avulsion, if you will, and it forms what we call as an oxbow lake.
You've all heard of those.
Gulf of Mexico wouldn't be held back by the Mississippi River anymore. As a result, the city might actually have to be abandoned because of the lack of fresh water for the residents. All of the petrochemical plants between Baton Rouge and New Orleans would be in serious trouble because they would lose their access to the Mississippi River. And they use this as a way to cool the chemical processes and the machinery that they use in their plants. In addition, the entire port facilities between Baton It's fairly rare to open to this structure. This is actually only the 15th time in 2019 that it's been opened since it first became operational in 1964. During the 1973 Mississippi River flood, it was the first major... the world's largest prefabricated power station. Now, it generates power for Vidalia and the surrounding area. It's no Hoover Dam, but it also serves as part of the way that the Mississippi River gets diverted to the Atchafalaya. Structures like this allow pressure to be taken off of the low...
So it's not going to last. This is going to go away. It all had to tie in. You know, I have a lot to go on here today, and I know you do too, but this goes back to New Orleans, Louisiana, Hurricane Ida, Noah Church. Take me back to Mississippi. What about my prophecy that there's going to be a hurricane hitting and it's coming there and it's going to hit New Orleans? It'll be okay. How'd it go? How'd that work out? The God, and God answered, but God, that it was that God routed them when they raised that war cry. Is it a word? Ha Elohim. So this is God. I looked up that. Going backwards, our God. I think this is Ha. This is Elohadnu. That's our God. Is one. He had one day. They gathered in one place. They will become one flesh. This means one. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. There's another one, same thing, 259, that one day. I thought it was interesting to start this because when I was listening to the book of Exodus today, when they have that part about building the tabernacle in the wilderness and, you know, the pure gold, you know, it had to be this pure gold. Both sides fit together as the precious metal. And there's 3 different words used for gold in the Bible. I don't know if they mention them here. Powdered gold, fine gold, and gold. Gold, pure gold, you know. So he made them for the tabernacle. The clasp had to be one to where they could fit them together in the curtains, because the tabernacle, it means, you know, doggone it, this means it is one. It is one. That's how the warp and the woof of God fits things together. That's how, as a living stone, you will be fit into the body of Christ. He also made 50 gold clasps to join the curtains together, so the tabernacle was a unit. It was, I love the ESV, a single whole. How do you like that? If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder that he tells you come to pass, and if he says, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them, you will not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. Now, I would like to come back tonight and talk to you about how this all started, and from the very get-go, back when this was new to me in 2016, 17, and 18, and Rob Skiba and Zen Garcia were coming out with the whole BS Nephilim thing, they both admitted it was because they struggled with the mean God of the Old Testament, and they were so happy to find out he was only killing the Nephilim blood, and that the God of the New Testament was a good God. That's their whole plan. And there are a lot of people out there saying that they've had dreams and visions that are opposite of mine. And it's up to you to decide who has your best interest at heart. I know me and my friends do. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame. That means adios.